So we're live.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us this week. On today's episode, we explore the impact of cybersecurity on children's growth and development. As technology becomes deeply woven into every part of their lives, from online learning to social media and gaming, it's critical we understand how to protect young minds while empowering them to navigate the digital world with confidence. Now, we would be remiss to have this conversation tonight without including a mom and an educator on the III podcast today. Oftentimes, it seems like parents are left out of the loop in these conversations. So, whatever's happening at school, the children are experiencing it in the classroom, and they go home, and then the mom and the dad is never included. And so, we decided on today's episode of III, we're going to put parents in the seat for them to be able to have an understanding to further the conversation between themselves, their children, and the educators. So, today we have Tristar Scallion on the III podcast. We're so glad to have you, Tristar. Tell
Glad
us,
to be
talk
here.
to
Glad
us.
to be here. Yeah, so it sounds like your topic is cybersecurity, correct?
Yes.
And why is it important? I feel as a mom and as an educator that it is extremely important, especially in 2025, where Gen Zs and millennials, and I can't think of our new term after the Gen Zs, but anyway, they live on their phones, they live on social media. And as an English teacher and as a research teacher in high school, 2 years ago, ChatGPT came out, and it seems like cybersecurity was a big thing. And I actually have had some experience where I was able to share how to use ChatGPT in a positive way and why cybersecurity is important. So I guess I can talk about cybersecurity first, and then we'll go, if you don't mind, we'll go into the why it's important to share with this generation on why and how ChatGPT can be used and can be used in a very lucrative way.
Absolutely. Yes. Tell us why cybersecurity matters for kids, for youth, for young adults, for teachers. Talk to us about that. Why it matters and then how to use it effectively.
So, why it matters is number one, safety. I know as an educator, we have these trainings to take at the beginning of the year. They're long, they're boring, but for instance, more specifically this year, I felt like this year's cybersecurity video was actually very relevant because we have so many people, predators, people going online. Some children are still latchkey kids where they get home, their parents are not home, they log in, they log on, they're on their cell phones. And the number one target, I'm sure, is predators looking for young adults. I teach secondary, so I spend a lot of time with uh, young adults who are between 12 and 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But the group that I'm most concerned with are the 12, 13, and 14-year-olds because they are vulnerable, they are young, they have not been educated. Unless we teach them how to be safe online, they could be taken advantage of.
What type of online threats are they facing specifically?
Probably, I would say, probably I don't know the statistics, but I'm just thinking like, um, how to lure in a young girl, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
to meet me in the chat room or meet me here. Let's have a conversation. They meet and then they start talking and having open discussions. And, I don't know what the conversations are like, but I can imagine what they could be like. Because kids sometimes share and they talk about it in the classroom. Like, hey, I was online, we
Yeah,
did
if I
X, Y,
can,
and Z without going into
just
detail.
add one example to that, the boys will get in the trap of speaking or chatting with a uh, you know scammer that's to pretend to be a female and asking for the boys' picture.
True.
So you can imagine the psychology of girls asking for the voice of the picture. It's a easy shoot for the scammers. And what they do and turn around and say, now I have your picture. Now you're about to get exposed unless you do, which is ransom, pretty much taking a hostage of those pictures and saying, I'll delete it if you just give me some money. But okay, yeah, $5 here, $50 here, $500 here. It's a very lengthy psychological impact on the boys, where many of the boys have experienced psychological, issues over the lengthy period of time. But now, if you think about it from that perspective, oh wait, that makes sense. But here's where the scammer even gets even worse than that scamming. What they do is they will turn around, send a message to the boy saying, like, I think you're being scammed. Let me help you get the scammer off your back.
Hmm.
So this double dipping of scamming, where to say one person is scamming off of the picture, the other guy is saying, I'm gonna attack the other guy who's scamming you and pay me so that way, I will get the picture back for you. Right. So it's a vicious cycle. So as a parent, it's really is important that we speak these languages to them and say, hey, you will probably experience that more likely than not, right? Because the amount of scammers that are out there, they're not necessarily targeting one. They're scamming a bunch of people all at once. So they spray their scam to thousands and thousands of people, right? Just to see which one comes back. Just to kind of give you another example of it, the adult guys like me will get a text message from somebody who will send a picture of wine bottles saying, dinner tonight, right? Or send. I get that all the time. I'm flattered, but at the same time, what you can do, and this is a solution, that you can take that text, don't necessarily copy and paste it, but take a screenshot of that text and put it in Google and say who's getting scammed in this number from this number with this sort of information. So you can tag that spam as a scam that's happening, because you can now create a database of these sort of messages from this specific number. So problem with numbers is that there's just way too many of them, and then sometimes it's even stolen. So for example, somebody's used numbers being repurposed for the scammers. You have many ways to look at it, but these scamming happens first in the spray, like they spray all around, and then whoever does respond to that, they start all of a sudden creating a targeted profile around that. So say, for example, if I responded, they'll figure out that I'm not an adult of certain age. They'll figure out what age I am and then go from there. But what they're doing is they're baiting me with multiple texts, right? So wine is one example, but if the wine doesn't work, they will send a picture of something like, come and pick me up from the airport. I'm here already, right? You can imagine how persistent they are in order to figure out if they can get one response from you, that's enough to hook you and start the conversation from that point. For an adult like me, I'll tell you, the amount of scams that I get on a daily basis, sometimes I just have to sit there and look at it like, who am I supposed to pick up from the airport at this time, right? My brain starts thinking. Now for the kids, it's a whole nother story. They don't have time to think. They have to be instant, because otherwise...
I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking about what Tristar, what you said before with regard to kids coming home, the latchkey kids. In that space alone, the psychological and developmental risks of unmonitored exposure that now you're entering into your home and you're getting immediately online and you're having these conversations. Listening to Asif with the wine bottle, I'm thinking about the young boys and young girls that are going online, and then the people that are attempting to talk to them through Messenger. Messenger is just one of the ways, and then they're not who they say they are. For example, Homeland Security. We've been seeing Homeland Security working overtime. Thank God. I'm all about the bus, right? Harsher punishment for child and sex offenders. Where Homeland Security, they have been catching predators through online sources where young girls and young boys were being lured places, and then it was an adult male coming to take advantage of them. How do we keep that from happening? Like, what do we put in place? What type of conversations do we have with our children, whether you're a parent or an educator, with what to look out for, what not to do, how not to engage? Like, do we come from a proactive space, like this is what can occur, or do we come from a place where a fear-based, like don't do this because this may happen? Like, what is the best way to educate the kid as well as the parent to have these conversations in an open forum where it's a safe place to discuss it?
Yeah, I mean, Trista, I'll let you go. But as a boy of father of 3 boys, my brain is just going all different directions. But for an educator like you, I would like to learn and see how I can apply that.
I don't know. I think of actually one important source is our librarians in schools. I know for me, anytime I had any type of questions for cybersecurity or just teaching our students safe spaces and safe ways to navigate the internet, to navigate the tools that they have, is to show them how. So it sounds a little old school, but librarians have a plethora of training skills and tools that we can share with parents, we can share with our students. And from that alone, I feel is very important. And then, like Masako stated, having these conversations, it could just be a simple advisory lesson, or it can be in your homeroom class in the morning. And then the more you're talking about it, the more kids are going to talk about it, because it's important and it's so necessary and needed. You know, something could happen tomorrow and be like, oh, we discussed that when I went to the library yesterday, or we discussed that in the counselor's office. We had a mediator and we had a roundtable discussion. So those conversations are so important.
Are these conversations? Hey, Bobby Ray, Tristar, are these conversations happening on the school front with librarians and the students?
They have happened. I won't say they're happening for me this year, but in my previous campuses, yes. Because I was the type, I was always reaching out and using them as a resource, because I used to teach research. And so it brings me to also looking at the online tools from not necessarily a cybersecurity perspective, but more so like, hey, I want to use ChatGPT to write my research paper. And so like, okay, well, we can show you how to use ChatGPT. But just to say, I'm going to use it to write a research paper, that's not okay, because it is going to be ran through a system. AI will be detected, and you will be doing that 4,000 research paper over again. I've actually been a part of that conversation with.
How do you talk to the kids about, we know that you have this research paper. What is the proper way to use a language model when being assisted for your homework assignments?
We demonstrate for them. So I use my own papers that I've used for
the listeners, for the watchers and listeners. Can you give us some examples of the smart way to use a language model to help you do your work, your homework assignment?
You want to show them an authentic paper versus an AI paper. Human words versus robotic words. We all know that AI, the tone of it can be robotic. And so children are not, they are as intelligent as, if you think they're not as intelligent, they are. It's just you have to bring them to the awareness. Hey, this is out there, so be very careful. So I used to use my own papers to teach, but I've been to grad school a couple of times. So I literally would use my own papers to show them this is my voice versus this is an AI voice. And that's how you give them authentic pieces of paper. And then there's a database where we can access through College Board. I know I'm kind of being a little too deep here, but not having the mini lesson does not make the issue go away, because ignorance is bliss. And they will say, well, no one told me. Well, yeah, we had this mini lesson on May 25th, 5th period at this time. And so once you show them, they're going to use it. If you don't ever have the mini lesson or ever have the conversation, then young people are they're going to grab at what's easy and fast and quick. We're in a microwave world, and fast and quick is not the best way.
Awesome. So we're talking about the practical strategies for building a safe digital environment at home and in schools. Bobbi Ray has joined us. Bobbi Ray Tristar is an educator and a parent. So we felt it paramount to have her as an educator and a parent to come on and share with us her strategies of cybersecurity and why it matters for kids and what type of online threats are out there and what parents can be looking out for to engage in the conversation with other educators to instill digital awareness and critical thinking. So we are glad to have you here. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. Well, I'm glad to meet you, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. I think cyber safe is really important for young people today because they have threats that we just simply didn't have, right? Not just individual and bad actors, but even corporate threats. The whole social networking situation was designed to hijack parts of human development in those developmental years, so it would become a permanent part of their life. It was the new cigarettes, if you will. So understanding what cyber safe means, that it's always evolving, that most curriculums nowadays are looking towards not just here's your one class on it and have a good day, that those briefings are integrated into syllabuses, into lessons plans to make sure that people understand, hey, by the way, here's the latest, or did you know that? Because the front always evolves, and I'm hearing some wonderful things when it comes to AI and understanding that they need to evolve and we need to evolve too, as far as both from the professor side and from the student side as to how do we use AI. It is a great launch point, but it's all about those lenses, different perspectives. I need to see your opinion and your view based upon who you are. Don't just give me some facts. I mean, I will say, in the defense of young people, because I used to be one, my family had a set of encyclopedias. So many of those papers I wrote were straight out of the encyclopedia. So I'm just saying.
Well, it's interesting because I'm listening to you, Bobbi Ray, and my synapses are firing, because if you're saying that the AI is the new cigarette and AI leverages knowledge, and books are being replaced with electronic books, and handwriting is being removed, although that develops brain development in handwriting. Help me understand, friend or foe? Like, is this friend or foe?
Or both. I think what really comes into play is the speed at which things happen, right? When we were in a more analog situation, there was time for teachers to really review, really get into, what they're doing and what they're saying. But now as things are electronic, as fast as the students send it in, they're expecting a grade back. Like, really? Did you think I, as the professor, am not a computer? You may have used a computer to generate this content, right? But that being said, I think something important that we all need to keep in mind is talking about the business side of cyber danger, right? Everyone thinks it's the creep in the van, and there is that for sure, right? Or someone in the basement trying to get at a kid, and there's definitely that for sure. But from a business perspective, keep in mind you got AI tools, and then you got tools that they sell to academia to help detect AI, written paper, or plagiarism. But then they got sites that use AI to try to trick those systems. The same company owns all of those backends. Just like Bayer makes Roundup, and they make cancer medications. I'm just saying. So it's nothing new. It's just in a new venue, and we just have to be cognizant.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we're talking about the latest of artificial intelligence, friends and foe, one of the things that we really amplify a lot is a small set of data that we all can agree on. And that goes without saying that that's how human brain works, and that's how also artificial intelligence, works. It takes a small set of data that we all can understand and say that's the major incident that's happening. Well, and then you forget the other major sets of data, which is that everything else is happening. It's just that it's not on the news feed. It's not on the news cycle. It's not pressing at this point. So one of the things that I really want to just bring to the front here is that when you outsource knowledge, there's negative to that. But when you outsource knowledge, there's a positive, which is that everything we do in the planet has some fundamentals in it, which is that, either the single plate that all things grow out of. And if we look at that fundamental continuously and practice understanding that fundamentals only, everything else up here is just a bunch of leaves and tree branches, right? It's the fundamental that matters the most. So if you think about those fundamentals, what happens over time as we grow, we become full of knowledge, but zero understanding. And those fundamentals is not knowledge. These are the understanding. The reason you understand anything is because you've been through those fundamentals, right? You cannot retain those knowledge because your understanding, the fundamentals are lacking. So if you revisit those fundamentals continuously, it's kind of like, you know how to write paragraphs and essays, but you forgot your A, B, C, D, X, Y, and Z, right? That's your fundamental. So take that small set of information and apply that to everything. Everything has a fundamental. Everything has a knowledge tree, but the fundamental is the understanding, right? So how do we understand topics differently, understand it better? It's kind of going back to that cybersecurity things of discussion. Cybersecurity is not the problem. It's your data, right? Your data is the fundamental. You have to understand your data so that way you have the knowledge of cybersecurity. A lot of the time we have cybersecurity knowledge, actions and tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, all these tools that everybody else provides to us, yet we have a little bit of miscommunications about fundamentals, right? We don't understand the data. We don't understand why we're being educated. We don't understand why it's important that we are able to read and write, right? I can create so many examples of why we need to read and write, but we have to really understand that data is what we have to understand in order to understand ChatGPT, in order to understand cybersecurity. Because cybersecurity is nothing more than protecting those data. That's why cybersecurity exists. The reason the threat exists is because somebody's trying to steal those data, right? Use those data to do harms towards us. So when you have understanding of fundamentals and you allow yourself a lot of room because you're not so bogged down by the knowledges, that you are able to look at the fundamentals and go back to fundamentals and understand it far deeper. And that's kind of one of the things that I always convince myself with that, hey, lots of negative, but the positive is just this. You are able to go back to the fundamentals and say, this is what we have to stick with, because if we cannot pass this on to the next generation is going to be full of knowledge, zero understanding. And if you don't understand, you never take action, right? So we have to break it down from that perspective, just to give you a quick glimpse into how it works in the IT space, is that you have information everywhere. But if you understood what data to extract to turn it into a knowledge, that's how you take action with information. See where I'm going with this? It's always something that you have to start with, but you just don't do whatever you do just, because somebody else does it. You do it because you understand it, right? If you can extract data, you can understand it. And if you can understand it, now you can take action with those data, right? Meaningful data, not just useless garbage data or text data that's coming in. So I just want to put that out there because I know we have many ways to go about this, but there's just always this fundamentals that we can always go back to and say, how does that work? How does that apply to us personally, right?
Well, I want to go back to, because we were talking about the importance of parenthood and educators and children being in the cyber security space and keeping our household safe. So what type of parental controls and privacy settings actually work?
I think Tristar headed very heavily is that when you are discuss it continuously, not off kind of like, hey, we went to the picnic that one time, the weather was perfect, didn't rain at all, no bugs anywhere, right? Not that day. I'm talking about continuous conversation about that. Joke about it, make references about it. I think Tristar hit it very heavily that if you reference it, it sticks a little bit more because you're creating multiple examples in a person who's very impressionable and will behave based on their understanding, take action, remember? So the configurations that I think me and you can talk about is based on if you have this sort of system in your house. Are you a Microsoft family or a Google type of family? Are you a Cisco family or are you, NVIDIA type of family, right? We don't know. If you're like a full Apple, a house full of Apple products, we might have to talk about configuration differently. But all configuration is based on the simple understanding that when you're watching a Netflix movie, talk about what's happening in that Netflix movie. Reference that, right? I've been watching movies and TV shows all my life. I can hand count the ones that I don't remember about technology because that's personal to me, right? Whatever's personal to you, make technology a little bit more personal because you are using phones all the time. You're using tablet, laptops all the time. Your TV is an internet. Your TV is a smart TV, has internet in it. So you kind of have to, just like you would talk about, say, a rom-com show that you love so much, talk about the fact that that rom-com had some technology discussions in it and turn that into a teaching moment, exemplar moment, right? I'll pause at that, but I thought that was a very powerful reminder that Tristar gave, and I love that.
I really love the fact. I love that. I think it goes back to begin with the end in mind, right? It is really about the exchange of information, the exchange of knowledge. It doesn't matter the format. It doesn't matter the person, how brilliant they are. What did you communicate across? What did they understand? A lot of times people say, well, any paper you've ever wrote is what, tell them what you're going to tell them and tell them what you told them kind of thing. Well, we got to kind of expand upon all of those things, add something before you tell me what you told me. Tell me why, the whiffum. Why should I care? What's in it for me, right? What is it that's unique in what you're telling me that I couldn't have Googled? Because so much information is in their hands, then require more. They're smart. From kindergarten on up, they can rise to the occasion. Keep asking for more. You got all of this information, great. How does that affect us? How does it affect you? So when you add perspective that they can tie it into their own life, have their own life skills now grow because of it, now you've actually done something. I have a person on my team, he's relatively new, and a recent MBA grad, and he's very textbook, but his people skills have some work to do, right? So in that space, he keeps saying, I just got my MBA. Yet not a single person on your team interacts with you on a regular basis. Where's your people skills? There's more to it. So he literally is the personification of, I have a lot of information, but how do I apply it to life to make a situation better, to make relationships better, to make the exchange of ideas better? I've never, in many years, I've never had an entire team to come and say about their boss, I don't want to work with him or anything. I would rather do it myself. That's the problem. Because while he processes and can recapitulate information or he sends me whole info papers or white paper, and I'm like, I really don't think he realized that I can see Copilot all up in this. But when I ask, how does this benefit the company? Well, it just should. I said, well, you got a master's. It just should is not the answer I expect, right? So that whole piece of, it's not just young people, it's all people. We got the information. Now, what do we do with it? Require the why.
All right.
It goes back to something I was saying earlier in the week. Application. I did a post on the application of I am, right? I was like, we use that term I am so gingerly. But what are you IMing? Like, what use case are you using this for? Yes, you have a whole plethora of information, but is there any commonalities of anything in that? They're so far removed, and it makes me think about, being proactive versus retroactive. Here recently, coming out of a season where the Royal was, she always wanted to watch this particular creator. So it frightened me after a while. I was like, let me come sit down and watch this with you. What is so giving about this particular creator? So, I take to the internet to find out where this creator's from, if there's any type of information that is in alignment with this name and this brand. Is this something that I should be concerned with? And it's like, as a parent, why should I have to come back after the fact because I'm so concerned that my child is involved in something so deeply, versus doing my due diligence in the beginning? It's like, I don't want to be late to the game. I want to be proactive and steer her in directions to keep her safe at all times. As all parents, I would imagine, want that for their kids. But as we were talking about in the beginning, when Tristar was saying there was a lot of latchkey kids that are going home alone and jumping online and, being exposed to things that, some things you see you can never unsee, and it changes your life trajectory forever. And so how do we just keep our family safe from the beginning of it all?
I think it's covered in, what was it? Was that Everybody Lies, or was that Thinking Fast and Slow, where it talks about that the kids can learn about things that we didn't learn about until our late developmental years, just through a simple Google search. So before they can learn how to navigate life, they're learning about strange things that even as adults make us blush, right? So there's some things as a parent that you need to learn how to do. So for example is, whatever device or however your family connects to the internet, you need to learn how to password protect the admin account to that device and go through the logs and see what they're looking for. They don't have privacy rights in your home, just like your parents would go through, listen on the phone or go through, see what's going on, because they may not recognize danger for what it is. And while they have time to, if they're not a latchkey kid, while there's time to do your homework should be done on the computer that's in an open place in the home. So whether it's the dining room or wherever that is, it shouldn't be some place where they can go down a rabbit hole and not know that you might look over their shoulder at any time, right? That's important because it changes behaviors. There's a thing about character, but character grows and is developed over time. You could tell folks who haven't had a lot of character development because they do things when no one is looking differently than they would if people were, right? So, that there's no substitute for your role as a parent. And working with educators is essential. I know my children hated it that I had a relationship with every teacher. Every teacher. There was not a day that went by that there wasn't an email back and forth or, something going back and forth. It's like, why you got to talk to them? No. But what you won't be able to do is pretty much is cut them off altogether. You got things like quiet time or whatever that you can put into your devices. Yeah, that may work. Depends on your kid. I know with my kids, not only did it not work, because I would disconnect and take the router into my room and secure it in my closet. All I did was get Wi-Fi passwords from the neighbors' kids, and they were back on. Right. So, and now I had no visibility into what they were doing. So,
Yeah. That it's just best to stay open and stay in a safe environment where there's an open line of communication. So no matter what comes up, they feel, my parents, even to other kids, right? When you want to, at least I see this is what I hope to continue to do, to be the parent that my child would say to the other kids, hey, you can talk to my mom about it.
Yeah.
We can go to my mom
Yeah.
We can go to my place, like be the place that everybody wants to come to. So you always know what's going on, and all of the kids know that they're in a safe space.
And people mistake that for being a open parent or a parent that has open communications with the young people in their lives. And I say the young people in their lives because it's not just their kid. If you're that parent, you probably got nieces and nephews and other folks' kids who come and talk to you. And I tried to be that way with my children. And for the most part, I was, right? It was not always easy. So just let me put that out there. It doesn't mean everything's okay, but it does mean you cannot overreact when they're honest with you, right? And sometimes I can remember 2 different occasions where a subject came up based upon something they saw on the internet. And I said, yes, this is out there. It's something you probably don't want to be involved in. And I promise if you remember to ask me when you're older, I will tell you why. But for now, I need you to please just trust me. Oh, and a couple of years later, remember when you said they kept track, but they trusted me because I did not always overreact, right? Not in front of them anyway. I might have to go into my bathroom and scream until the towel, but do not overreact, because if they're seeing it, the threat exists, and you can't be so busy forcing what you think their reality should be that you're not paying attention to what their reality is.
Yeah. That's a whole word right there.
That is amazing.
That is a whole word.
Trista, I gotta ask, how is this conversation going for you so far?
Oh my goodness, it's making me think 2 things. Number one, we need more parents like Miss May and Mr. Robinson. It is also making me think about how there are not enough, what's the word? So in my experience, I've actually been in environments where it was mandatory that we talked about these things weekly. It makes me think like, okay, the school that your child, like, is it mandatory that we talk about, that we train kids on, AI tools, or that we train kids on cybersecurity, like, are we doing these, are other educators out there doing mini lessons? Because I'm in a particularly different space this year where I'm actually at an alternative school where the students, they see so much, like you mentioned, like they see things that they shouldn't be seeing, and that, it makes us blush. So it made me think like, wow, there's a whole list of things that they've shared with me this year. And I'm like, I can't even repeat. I can't even like, I can have the same conversation, but some things I have to report because it's just so deep. And then I also think about like, wow, what's happening at home with parents? Like, the conversation is not happening, because if it were happening, the conversations would not surface in the classroom. And those are the 2 things that I'm thinking. Like, I love parents that are emailing me and communicating with me on a regular basis. And I love to hear that, hey, my home after school is the house where they can go and say, hey, so-and-so's mom is going to allow me to have that conversation. Because we still do live in a society where you do have rigid parents, like, oh, we don't discuss these things at home. And then you can tell the students where a little more liberal, a little more open. And so they actually help me lead those discussions. So it just made me think about you guys as parents and as, educators, obviously, but as parents too, like, just age, and it's just so much.
What do we do?
Masako, just to hit on Trista's point on who's learning, right? Look, I think kids are going to learn what adults teaches, and adults are going to teach what they learn, right? It's so same fundamentals all over again, right? If you have the fundamentals and you understand knowledge, you're going to understand how to teach those knowledge. Not necessarily knowledge is the key point here, right? So That's what Masako is, so tirelessly working towards is to do data literacy for the adults, data literacy for somebody who's a responsible custodian of a child who's going to grow in their supervision, right? Because if you think about it, we train a lot of our senior leaders to engage with the junior leaders, right? Junior leaders thinking that, hey, these guys are going to replace us one day. So when you have to teach, you really have to give them the terminologies, give them the skill sets that Bobby Ray is talking about, right? The fact that you cannot overreact, because it suppresses a lot of the information that's supposed to come from, say, grassroots level, right? That information that's supposed to reach somewhere where the decisions has to be made. A lot of the information doesn't reach to that decision-making level, right? And decisions are never made. So it applies for the kids. It applies for organization. It applies to the military, right? We're all military veterans here. So, we can all look at it from the perspective of, if there's a gap in knowledge, how do we fill that gap? And majority of the gap is not with the kid. Majority of the gaps are with the adults. The adults that are in the room, they have a huge gap. Not necessarily they created that void, but that void was never addressed when they were young, right? It didn't really have to be there back in 1990, where you had one computer for the whole school, maybe, right? If you went to a school like that. And then, of course, it became household, and it became in your pockets, and now from the pockets to every corner of the street lamps, every street you walk on, there's the internet everywhere, right? So if that's the world we're living in, the world is moving a lot faster than the adults can catch up to. And there's no doubt about that.
You made me think about something. Ask your young, if you have nieces, nephews, children, ask them about digital citizenship, and has it been discussed? Because I was getting ahead of myself, but it's called digital citizenship. So it could be digital literacy as well, but whether you're in elementary, middle school, high, I teach at a secondary, I'm at a middle school to high school, so 6th grade through 12th. So say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about some digital citizen? Are you learning some digital literacy? Because then it opens the conversation. Are the teachers that they're spending a lot of time with having these conversations? And hey, can you tell me about the lesson for last week or last month? It could just be one a month, depending on where the student is going or attending, But it is now a part of the lesson plans. It is now where each teacher has to own a lesson for the month or for the week or whatever. You rotate the lessons, and it's very important. So I would just challenge y'all to ask your children or your young people in your family, hey, tell me a little bit more about this digital citizenship, and what are you learning?
Well, I will ask the same question to parents that come to our events on Fridays. What did you learn last Friday? Because it's an adult learning for 2 hours. We made it so easy for professionals, because we said, at least you can take hour, 2 hour, 90 minutes. If you can take 120 minutes, that's great. But 90 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever you can, spend it with me and Masako, and just learn these few things. Because sometimes you don't want to ask Asif, but if Asif can show you that capability of ChatGPT, and you can ask ChatGPT about it, ChatGPT is going to teach you far more line items than Asif can teach you. Because Asif can only go over 3 things at once. ChatGPT can go down 15 different things all at once in one list, right? I think that's important, because a lot of the parents think of ChatGPT as like, oh, I just use it for my professional purposes, or just questions that comes up that I should be asking Google about. Well, now you can actually create a plan with ChatGPT, say, like you just said, let me teach my son or daughter, my niece and nephews, my community members who are of certain age about this topic on this day. How can Asif and Masako help you with that, right? Because if you do, then you sit down and teach somebody else, kind of like a train the trainer situation, right? But that's why we're having this conversation, is to bring the adults in the room to say, there's professional AI, but AI is not a professional problem. It's a societal problem, because AI is messing with something that we inherently are vulnerable to, which is not cybersecurity, but knowledge, right? Knowledge is a big vulnerability for us, because, like, you can imagine, misinformation and information goes in the same bucket. As long as you like misinformation, you will call it information. I call it misinformation because I think information otherwise, right? So I think this is a great opportunity for adults to get involved, and of course, we're available every Friday covering this topic. So,
Love it.
Yeah, I think it's really important for parents to understand that as you navigate this space, you're gonna as your young people learn, you're gonna be learning too in some instances. And if it's something that's shocking to you, you cannot process right there in front of them, right? Who says it has to be a fire and forget? A topic comes up and is really much deeper and has a lot of different implications. Okay, you can revisit it the next time y'all interact after you've had time to go and to better understand it yourself to then further the conversation. It shouldn't be staccato in nature. It should flow, right? And the pieces should connect and then double back and loop around. When doubling down on education, it means from my perspective, it means not just understanding the surface level, talking to your young person and extracting them out, right? Through Socratic questioning, you pull from them the areas that really interest them or the parts that they're really confused about. And in those spaces, now go and find out more about that. And some cases you can find out together. Some cases you might need to go find out first, and then y'all go find out together. So, but it should be a discovery. What you can't do is let your own guilt, shame, embarrassment, or history about who you used to be, what you used to do, or what is or what isn't, prevent you from helping your child now. So,
yeah, that's true.
Masako, I thought I heard you were about to say something, but
I just got my basket of golden nuggets. All y'all giving me golden nuggets. I'm like,
well, what we usually do is the first hour we talk through these topics that we can say, like, this is what's in the news, these are the things that people are doing, these are the events that are happening. But the last hour of the conversation, we actually kind of dive in deep to the technology. And then we do that at the risk of confusing some people, right? And they might say, hey, that's too technical for me, right? But the way Masako does it is that she does it through a storytelling, right? Walks through that technological part to say, this is how it applies to you. Your WIFM is what's in it for you is here on this side of things, but on the other side is totally technical. But that's a technical terminology, but this technical terminology applies to you in this terminology, right? Sort of like, you can call it a bus in the street, but there's a bus inside of a computer. If you don't know, now you know, right? And we just kind of want to have you practice that the world that we're moving into technologically, what happens is that the kids are far more technologically adept than adult is. Like, I was technologically far more adept than my parents were. My parents definitely were far more technologically adept than their parents were. There's this sort of reality of the nature, the ontology of things. And I just have to kind of explain this real quick. My parents were the first one to ride an airplane, not my grandparents, right? So these sort of things are what's happening. But as you use terminologies in your adulthood, those terminologies is coming from your childhood. Am I wrong to assume that, right? So the generational gaps that creates that over time, what we have a responsibility is just to do what we are about to do right now. Talk a little bit technical, so that way you hear this technological term and say, that's the first time I heard it. I probably will hear it again, but next time I hear it, I'll try to learn about it. But better yet, learn it the first time as soon as you hear it, right? So, prepare to take some notes on this topic to say, like, hey, this is the notes I'm going to take. Because let's say, for example, I just use the word ontology, right? Ontology of large language model is a huge topic. You might not know about it, but knowing that, you can understand the vulnerabilities of large language model. Again, if you don't know what large language model is what ChatGPT is. ChatGPT just happened to be the name of the brand. Large language model is the technology. And these large language models really, really suffers from not having a good understanding of ontology of the way the humans are, right? So we really have to understand vulnerabilities of things, where technology has limitation, and how can we manage the expectation of these technologies, right? The key word here is that listen to it, hear it, and if you hear it, take notes on it and study it. And if you take notes on it and you can study it, that means prep yourself for the next time you hear it. Say, that must be important because that's the second time I heard that, right? Maybe the third and fourth time you'll hear it, then you say, I need to get my professional at this because whatever that terminology is, I keep hearing it everywhere.
Yeah, and then you also, I say they, but it's us, it's we. Just like children need age-appropriate guidance, not fear-based restrictions, we too, like we have to serve the child that's within ourselves. So how are we showing up in those instances where we don't know what we're hearing?
Yeah.
Instead of being fearful of it, being curious about it and say, oh, well, what is that? This is the first time I'm hearing this. Could you explain more of this to me, please? And so showing up with that type of curiosity, because if our children see us reacting to something where we're fearful and we're not interested in moving forward and becoming more aware of what's next, then how are they going to react? They're looking to us to see, how they will react.
Yeah. So Bobby, I kind of had the discussion with Masako, like, there's so many ways to explain what's happening in the world around us. But for the kids, this is about cybersecurity. So last time we had this discussion, we talked about if you have a device that leaves your house that operates within your Wi-Fi, all of a sudden it goes to the school Wi-Fi, and the school just happened to get attacked, an attack that led into the devices that your kids take to school. Now that device is compromised, now it comes to your Wi-Fi, now it does all sorts of malicious activities. Just one example of what could go wrong, right? But that's cybersecurity, that's device protection, that's device security, psychological safety, right? That piece about what happens when the kids are using AI and they have a psychological implications with those artificial intelligence use cases. I have few case studies, but let's lead that conversation off because I think there's a lot to unpack here, and I want to take a lead on that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that when you're talking about, like you mentioned, when you're talking about the technology in the home and that it goes other places, you have to have segregation of technologies. So for example, if you're paying a light bill or accessing your bank, it should not be on the same phone that your young person uses or anyone else other than a bill payer uses out there, right? Be careful of those family sharing kind of things where it'll be like, share this with all of your friends. Okay, well, if you didn't want pictures of your kid just randomly out there, but you set up a situation where you're sharing with them and through their various apps, they're sharing with everybody, right? So just to talk about what the rules of engagement is for your individual family and how do you segregate data in your household. If I have a machine, a laptop that I use that laptop to handle my family business, and it has, because you want to keep all of your account information in the password saver of some type, a password keeper of some type. That machine, when it's not used, you got more than one, turn it off, unplug it. They can't hack what they can't get to. I'm just saying, right?
Yeah.
So just think about what information is where, who in your family you're sharing stuff with, because everybody they're sharing with, it's kind of like the same thing with humans. Be careful who you connect with physically because you're with everyone that they physically connected. Same thing applies. And it happens much faster electronically. Just as far as how your information is disseminated. So keep that in mind. You don't want to be fearful, but you do want to be smart, right? Yeah.
I just laughed out loud because there was literally an AFN commercial just by what you said. Do you know where your devices have been?
Right.
Do you know who your devices been hanging out with? As in, AFN is our Armed Forces Network over in Europe and Korea or Asian Pacifics. So AFN had a commercial where they was telling the soldiers, like, is your device protected? Do you know who your device has been hanging out with, right? So greatly put, Bobby, because I think that leads that whole conversation into now you have to understand that data has gravity. And I think in my journey for the last 20 years of being in the space of protection, not understanding data has gravity is a huge gap that I've even myself experienced. Because, we say like data, like what does that mean, data? Like a bunch of dots on a paper, Excel sheet. What does that mean, data? So you don't really have to go down the rabbit hole, but you can just figure out multiple layers of data, and all of a sudden you see like, okay, there's only a few types of data out there. If I can just think of that, now I can think of data has gravity. And the reason you have to understand data has gravity is because data is just like a piece of paper, but you don't think of a piece of paper for data, correct? And you don't think your laptop as the one that's carrying a bunch of pieces of paper. Data literally has gravity. If you think about it that way, what that means is that wherever that data sits and lands on or rests on, that data could be accessed by somebody who wants to get that piece of paper off of your hand, right? If that data has to travel from here, from Texas to Ohio, that means that data actually has to travel, just like you as a person will have to take a piece of paper and travel to Ohio to drop it off in Ohio. Well, the reason I create that imagination of how data is physical, how data has a gravity, it means that now you have to start thinking of data differently. So what Bobby just said, where do you put that data, right? Do you put it on the stove or do you put it on the closet? Do you put that on the closet or do you want to lock it up somewhere, right? There's a different sets of data that you have to look at. And if it's physical data, that means you can segregate and separate it, right? One is password protected, one isn't. One is for the kids to play with, one isn't for the kids to touch, right? So
I think not everybody thinks about this, because I'm thinking about all of the spy movies that I've seen where they, they chewed the paper, right? Because that's data. That was information that could not get out.
Right.
Now
data has gravity, right? It does fall whenever you drop it.
That way. I mean, do they? Or do they not? With regard to, yes, you think about it, but you're not really intentional about it.
Yeah. That piece right there, as far as thinking about it but being intentional. So for example, as people don't realize, you're on your device, but hey, my job has Wi-Fi. I will connect to this Wi-Fi. Well, anything you do that's owned by the company is subject for the company to review. Just know that. So most people, it won't affect you, but when it does, trust me, it does. As a person who pulls the data to say, this is what they did, and this is where they went, this is what they said, and this is what that email that they thought was in their personal account said. And everything.
Because they were on the company's internet.
They were on the company's internet. Network. You go to Starbucks, you're on Starbucks internet, and nobody even read that little warning thing that come up. And I promise you, their network agreement says something like, "We're responsible for nothing, and we can look at what we want to." Promise you. And not just them, anyone, right? That's kind of what it comes down to. So there's a reason why in cybersecurity, in the cybersecurity world, when we're listening to everything through various devices, it's called promiscuous role, right? Because we get everything. There's nothing. We can just get data from here, get data from there. So where are you using your devices? I wouldn't say be fearful, but be thoughtful. Certain things, can't that wait till you get to a more secure place or to a more secure network? I recently got, like many people, got caught up in the Coinbase hack from my cryptocurrency. And I knew right away when I was getting those notifications, someone's trying to get in your account. Someone's trying to get in your account. Well, I know it ain't me. This could be a scam email, which was another scam going on. It turned out Coinbase was hacked. So, but when it was saying, give me your key, I was like, not in this life.
Right. As long as they don't have your key, you good.
Right. If I can't get to it, you can't get to it. But I'm sure not going to help you. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say something, because what you said about Starbucks is important. That when government tells you, which just happened recently, when government is telling you, like, if you have a government device and you log in anywhere but in the government Wi-Fi, we're going to know that you're logged into the government Wi-Fi. I mean, this is a reminder to everybody. There's a reason why government does this, right? So let me actually put this into the data gravity perspective. Now you got to imagine things again. that data is as physical as everything you deal in life, right? A piece of paper that you got to guard with your life, you have to protect your data the same way. You can't think of data like woohoo, some magic in the cloud kind of things, right? You don't just throw data in the air, all of a sudden it disappears. It doesn't. It actually comes back down and falls, right? So what Bobby said about these encryption piece, which is that, you go to wherever you're going and somebody says, this device is encrypted. This information is encrypted. Be mindful, because they're not responsible for you to understand how encryption works. They just have to tell you to get you to say something that you wouldn't want to say without it being encrypted. And I can go down the list of events that happened last month before that, years and years with encryption. But let's just start here, because there's something educational. We don't have to really talk about the bad understanding of encryption. So here's what happens with encryption. Just like data and gravity, you have to start imagining, where is it being encrypted? Mm-hmm. If it's not being encrypted in your device, it means that it's being encrypted once it leaves your device. If it leaves your device and is traveling to where it's supposed to be encrypted, that's a long way to get to the what? Ohio, right? Mm-hmm. You could get robbed in between. So let me emphasize that again with a little bit of latest technology. It's called PIE, P-I-E, pre-internet encryption. That means your device has that capability to encrypt that information before it hits the internet. Pre-internet encryption. It's being encrypted before it hits the what? That road, the highway of the internet, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's encrypted before it leaves your device or hits the internet, which internet is in your device, it's a little bit of gap, right? But now understand, when somebody says it's encrypted, they don't mean PIE most of the time. That means it leaves your device, travels the internet, wide open for everybody to look at. Anybody that is that interested about, a thief's life, they will look it up, right? But it will end in Ohio, and then it will get encrypted to go back to wherever it goes. Say you're sending it to New York for some reason. It goes to Ohio, gets encrypted there, then it moves to New York, right? Texas, mm-hmm. Ohio, New York. So where has it been encrypted matters. So how does that apply to parents and kids? Right?
Do we use VPNs?
No.
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 How do you lock your house up? How does that apply? How does that apply to parents and kids?
VPN makes you feel good. How about that?
So it's a hoax.
It's like airport security. You're like, we do all this, and some lady just walks on the plane. I'm just saying, we do all this. Yes. Just get up in the wheel well. I'm just saying. So,
no, look, not all VPNs are equal. Not all internet service providers are equal. So think about ISP.
But not all parents are even thinking about VPNs either.
No,
so talk to me
VPNs
about
on internet service provider. You can go down that rabbit hole. But it's always important, like we talked about, you cannot protect yourself against everything. But you have to have a certain amount of control at minimum, which is that you can communicate with your kids, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're communicating with your kids, you kind of have to start thinking about how Bobby said it, right? Segment those information so that way it's not all at once, all in the same place, and it's not just taking turns and just being used, right? Whenever you're not using that data, put that data away, right? Lock it up somewhere else. So kind of going back to that encryption piece about internet, some of the devices will tell you that, hey, this is encrypted information. However, I guess a Telegram is a good one. Telegram, when you're using Telegram, everyone's like, oh, that's secret stuff. Like nobody can read this. Well, no, it costs a lot of money to encrypt information for you. So the other asterisk mark next to that encrypted data means that you have to turn it on every time you want to encrypt it. If it wasn't turned on for this data to be specifically encrypted, it wasn't encrypted. It just flew by everybody else's house and everybody saw it coming, right? So those are kind of things that I think it's a little bit technical, but if you can grasp it, you can all of a sudden start having conversation around it, because you will see it on TV all the time. They will say, hey, encryption. You're like, that's not how encryption works.
Right.
So it sounds to me like parents should not be on the same network as their children. The children should not do their homework or get on social media on the same computer and network that the parents utilize to pay bills.
Office works. Yeah.
And I get it that sometimes, maybe the budget doesn't allow for separate devices. So if you have devices that don't use separate profiles, there are things you can do in the various devices. So if it's a mobile device in iOS or Android, you can put a passcode on specific apps. So for example, is you give someone, kids do this all the time. You give kids your phone and say, watch YouTube. You give a little toddler. Then the next thing you know, food is coming to the house, right? Or a truckload of something that you didn't need is coming to the house because a child is in there ordering because they saw you doing it. Why isn't there a separate passcode for that app? Because you can do it with most devices, right? Not the same pin that you use to unlock the screen, but a whole different passcode. And I say passcode and not Face ID, because if your kids are smart, and they are, they'll just wait for you to go to sleep and hold it up in front of your face and do what it happens. It happens all the time, right? Amazon is a thing. So what kids don't necessarily get, depends on the kid, the age of the child, is that those things that come cost, and that money comes out of your account. Why did you give them a phone, access to your phone, or your phone is unsecure in your home so that they can make magic with your bank account?
You know what? You're right. You're right, Bobby Ray, because I'm thinking about things from Amazon when she's watching shows, our notifications that's come to my email where things have been purchased. And I'm like,
yeah.
It's like on the shows that they watch, it now shows up. Do you want to buy this? Like, it gives an option to purchase.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. And it's a question, of course they want to buy it, right? So, and then at that point, what I'll see is, parents then being upset with their child. But the negligence in this case was really yours. You gave them a loaded phone that can just do magic, and then expected them not to do magic.
Yeah.
It always baffles me. I don't get upset. I just feel like shame on me, because it's my fault. This is all learned behavior. Just like everybody tells me, everything you allow her to do now, this is learned behavior. So she may be doing it now. Wait till it gets later.
Yes, and I mean, and sometimes it's something simple, but it has been pretty big things, right? Entertainment consoles. I've heard personally of people who big screen TVs showed up at the house, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then or the kids saying, "Well, okay, it goes on your credit card. You don't have to pay," because they don't have a job and they really don't necessarily understand money yet. Right.
Well, that's why those conversations, I'm glad that too, but that's why those conversations on financial literacy needs to be happening early on.
Yes.
That's why you need to get your children involved in your workspace early on. So it's not magic. It's not smoking glass and mirrors, but it's like, oh no, this is a process. So they have an understanding, just like us and the children on cybersecurity. They need to have an understanding on what things cost.
For example, on my Android device, and I have both, on my Android device, I'll take different devices depend upon where I'm going, right? Because you're at a festival somewhere, you need to make sure that the stuff that has access to your money, that those apps are protected. And in some case, like in Samsung, some of that stuff I put into Samsung Knox, so that even to see the folder, you lose your phone, and it's a reason you're freaking out, because they literally, and in moments, right, they have access to everything. They can Zelle your money right away. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting into something very important for the parents, right? Because when we're thinking about kids, you cannot protect your kids unless you can protect yourself.
Yes.
And you're not thinking about your kids' protection unless you think about your own protection. But I think what you guys are talking about gave me such a just a joy and laughter, but at the same time, just like, man, that was some serious stuff. Because me and my kids, we continuously have to talk about where does the water come from, and which water costs more money than the other water. One is for shower, one is for drinking. The drinking water costs more money, right? So kind of want to say that out loud because I'm having so many things that I can talk about at this point. But one of the things that I want to talk about is that I'm sorry, but technology is moving far faster than me and you can even catch up to it, learn about it. So as you guys are talking about password and passcodes, now we're talking about pass keys, right? We're getting to the world of pass keys where you don't have to remember passwords anymore. No more passcodes, right? It's literally pass keys. So you really have to navigate the water all around again to say, how do I do that app locking on Uber Eats with passkeys, right? What's going on? Is passkeys going to control all my apps, or am I going to have to say, no, that app I cannot have on my phone because it doesn't allow passkeys, right? I can have this one, but not all of them. And if it does have passkey only, maybe you don't have to use it with password. You have to use it with passcode, like Bobby said. There's a hidden options in your phone that if you can take that phone and you can hide all those apps, you can hide them. Even somebody searches for it, they will see you use. They were like, how do I get to that app where I can buy that big screen TV? Now, this is something that I think will sort of make a lot of people cringe a little bit, but the devices that you're giving your kids, minimize those transactions, right? Say, for example, if your kid's phone gets lost, what is the first thing that somebody's going to do? They're going to take the phone and they're going to turn the Wi-Fi off. And they're going to turn the Bluetooth off. And they can do that without having your kid's face, password, passcode, or their fingerprints, biometrics. So I say it's cringe is because you really have to start going down the rabbit hole because there's step by step. And this is the very, very first step of it. This is where things get a little bit more cringy as you do it. And it's like, oh my God, I'm leaving a kid behind in this world. But that's the world the other kids are growing up in, right? They're stealing your kids' data. So the first thing you have to do is take that device and turn off the feature where anybody can pick up that phone and turn that Wi-Fi off, that Bluetooth off. Because at that point, what you're enabling them to do is break into that phone as many times as they like, right? With many ways that they can break into that phone. Somebody who's not going to steal your device unless they know they can access it. There's no point of having a device that they have to spend 3-4 hours trying to break in with a code. Now, if you use 000, I'm not talking about you. If you use more protected, the 6-digit passcode like 000 and 2 more zeros, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about somebody you think like, okay, my passcode is pretty heavy. Somebody to take it, they're not going to be able to break it anytime soon. They don't really come after your device because of that. They come after your device that they've seen you leave it open for a few split seconds. And if you have it open for a few split seconds, one of the things that they can do is access it and turn off that Wi-Fi, turn off that Bluetooth, and turn it on so that way it never locks again, right? So do you see where I'm going with this now? That's the first layer of cringe, because after that, you got a bunch of other things that you have to protect that you're not necessarily thinking about. And guess who can help you with that? ChatGPT.
Yes.
ChatGPT can tell you specifically that I have a 3-year-old boy and he has this device. What do I need to know?
Right.
And ask it those uncomfortable questions, because ChatGPT is not going to mind.
Right.
I'm going to cringe a little bit, because I do cringe, because this is a very uncomfortable conversation to have. But the world that we live in, we really have to be uncomfortable with, because that's the next level of comfort. So this devices that has money inside of it, right? That wallet. How does somebody use that wallet without you holding that phone up to your face, or that biometrics? You have some protection there, right? You have some protection, because I'll tell you one of the things about biometrics is that your biometrics has its own chips. And that's something you might not need to know. But now that you know, you will say, oh, okay, so why does the bad guy wants my biometrics then? They don't. They just want to have access to that device so they can take all the other information.
Right.
What does that mean? They have your phone number. Your text will come through there. You have your email, and that email is where the bank sends the passcode to. Catch my drift here so far? Where I'm going with this? So you cannot have a duplicate of your phone in your kid's phone. That's right.
Yes.
Your phone has to be far different than their phone, and their phone has to be very, very different than yours. They cannot have your mail coming through at all.
Right.
No text going to their devices. No numbers that is associated with your kid's device should be associated with anything that you do as an adult, be it work or banking, whatever the case is. Because if they can take that device and send an email there, so that way they can log into the bank account because they know the email address that's already there. Now they're asking for, hey, send a number. By the way, it's called SIM jacking, which is notorious. It's really bad. SIM jacking means they literally stole your phone numbers because that's how easy it is to steal your phone number. And the mail part of it is, like I said, do not just put out a mail that bank can send the passcodes to. That mail has to be stored some devices where you only see it when you want to talk to your bank for some reason.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of there's a new set of tools coming out from different various phone providers for young people, for the parents, right? As far as what we used to call safe phones, that has changed, and it's two layers to it. The physical phone is a little different. So you'll have to get over your kid being able to keep up with the Johnsons. Sorry, the Johnsons are not living safe, so, but the things that reducing the number of apps, blocking social media, filtering and monitoring social media, these are all services that are now being offered for parents. And there's phones out there where you get the phone and part of your subscription is the AI tools help monitor the things that you set up. So it's not just you going through and trying to keep up with the latest and greatest, but it does, and by nature, kind of restricts what's available. But what it doesn't mean is your kids can't do everything everyone else is doing. The truth of the matter is, should your 8-year-old have a Facebook account? Or Instagram account? Really? Because I see stuff on Insta that make me say, oh, okay, well, I can put this down for another month or two. A lot of those things, the only reason I even have them is so I can understand what's out there, not because I want to be an influencer. That's not some stuff that's in my repertoire of things I want to do, but I need to understand the things that are out there. I need to understand the threats that are out there. And then the other piece of it is the GPS powered tools, meaning that those phones, while they're limited as far as what your young people can do and they're AI assisted as far as monitoring what they try to do, then there's also things like geofencing. If you're supposed to go to the store, if they're outside of that perimeter, it's going to let you know. So just understanding AI, again, can do great things and can be helpful even in the parenting realm. You just have to understand what tools are out there, what services are available, and what AI technologies are behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, oftentimes as parents, we hear people refer to us as paranoid. And I was like, I do err on the side of paranoia. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing a lot of stings in Florida on trafficking, children trafficking, horrible things. And they say that they were able to locate these people through certain social media platforms. And I was like, thank God if you're going to be stupid for being stupid, right? It's like, y'all know how I feel about that, harsher punishment. And so I say all that to say I was on a platform the other day and I let the royal be on it with me, right? And so this is where I'm sure I'm not being paranoid, but it didn't happen before. So after that, because I was on live, after that, there's so many populations came up where allow people to contact you immediately, allow them to fill out a form to talk to you. And it was like all of these things, it was like down a rabbit hole. And I was like, oh, I don't ever have to go on there again, because how many children are going on these platforms alone? And this is what's happening. It is that, that one click, that next click, that next click. And then you're in a situation where, you're hoping and praying.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, In some places, in some countries, they don't recommend a child under 14 even have a phone, right? So,
Yeah, they
and if
lock
they
them
do,
up in school. They lock them up for the
yes,
whole school time, like not even on person, but like literally on the wall somewhere outside of the school.
yes, they are actually locked up. And what they're finding is by getting away from having that distraction in the classroom, we had a problem in the military that for a while I was seeing when I was working in the schoolhouse, seeing young people come through, and even in their mid-20s, coming through their developmental courses, and their social skills were terrible. But you really got to understand that they were like the test dummies for a lot of the things that we implemented in the world, social media, which hijacked a lot of that. So they really communicating with each other. I assume when people come in, they come in with some kind of foundational. You're a senior in high school, you should be able to do A, B, and C. But that was no longer true. I had to watch my whole facial expression when I received my first student who could not sign his name, only to find out that the Training and Doctrine Command no longer made that a requirement because it is understood that now we have adults who cannot read cursive. And I would say, but just look at it. It looks like the letter. And it's like, I can't, right? So being able to move forward and understanding where they're at and then adjusting so that we can better accommodate or facilitate their success means we always have to understand the now, right? Speed, relevance, and that's just where we're at.
Yeah.
So with our kids, we cannot afford to not be proactive. And when it comes to AI, which is moving extremely fast already, I think we had a previous discussion when we talked about the integration of AI into things to the point that eventually they won't even mention AI as a thing. It's just in there, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
I think this is part that we go into that psychological impact of artificial intelligence. Not necessarily just to say artificial intelligence is giving us knowledge, but it's weakening our ability to be protected in cybersecurity space. So there's a way to go down this rabbit hole, but let me start with myself, right? Just part of the storytelling, because I don't know what other people are experiencing, but I can talk about myself, right? Let this be my therapy with Masako, maybe.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too, because Masako is great at that. So here's what happened since I've been using large language model. So large language model used to be called NLPs, natural language processing, and part of NLPs, which nobody would look it up unless they were told, they will call it chatbot, right? Or they will call it like autocorrection. They will call it like sentence generator. So many things, right? So large language models, NLPs, back in 2018ish, I started learning. You started using this small one, and then I started writing a lot through saying a few sentences, and all of a sudden it will create a full sentence for me, right? Very painful, not like ChatGPT. So I started using that, and I got really addicted to it because I was like, well, Grammarly fixes my grammar, but before I write that, I write it on my writer.ai, or if I write it on my writer.ai, I take it to my not Shakespeare, but this other one called which checks your formats of your sentences, right? So you have a sentence writer, and then you have your full paragraph writer, and then you have your full paragraph that goes to Grammarly. Now you fix your grammar. Now you can do all sorts of things that looks like you wrote it yourself. What happened to me as an adult is that I became very much just, if I wasn't doing that, I'm not doing anything else. So I am not writing for anybody unless I can do just that, right? So where did my handwriting capabilities go? Down the drain, right? Like if I see my handwriting today versus I see my handwriting 10 years ago, I would say, wow, what happened to my handwriting, right? Me writing on a piece of paper doesn't really apply to me anymore. I avoid it like it's a plague. But on top of that, I can see the effect of it because my handwriting is not so good. So what does that leave me professionally? Nowhere negative, right? Nobody cares. I write a paragraph and I write it in the handwriting and submit it as a resume, right? Professional doesn't impact me. But it's part of your brain development. And I think I want to go to something that Bobby mentioned earlier. If you think about it, what's happening in your brain is that your brain is continuously sending out signals throughout your body to make sure that everything is in place where it's supposed to be. So if you know anything about somebody losing their limbs, they will have the phantom limbs, which is that, if their legs been cut off, all of a sudden they can feel their toes, even though there is no toes involved. So if you take that kind of understanding of how body works, your devices that you hold onto your hand for so long, your body starts sending signals looking for that device in your hand. Because your body, like say, for example, if you had a pillow on your hand all day long, your body will look for that pillow all the time.
Right.
Brain is thinking about. Kids have blankies, right? Remember the blankies that kids would never leave the room without blankie. So if you think about it from those terminologies, the devices are just that now, right? If you don't have access to the device, your brain is spending a lot of its power looking for that device. And what does that device do for the brain that we don't do for our children? Say, for example, me and you can outsource many of our tasks to that device. So when the brain knows that task works from brain to device to brain to device, and brain is only sending the signal of the task, brain doesn't have to do that task anymore. Just like I don't have to do my handwriting anymore, correct? And handwriting, wasn't great to begin with, but I can see the quality of my handwriting is going down the drain. So what's happening is devices are doing lots of the psychological shift that we as an adult haven't experienced. But now we're talking about, how do we gap the knowledge understanding with the kids? Well, we can't really. It's not that we have to fill that gap or put a bridge in that gap. It's more like at least get up to date on it on a daily basis. That's why we're not talking about solutions here to configure your phone over and over. We're talking about you have to communicate with the kids far more in depth than we as a adult that grew up and had with our parents, right? Our parents didn't talk to us that much, but okay, they didn't, but this is the outcome of it, right? But what about your kids, right? Your kids, here's the thing, you're not going to know until it happens, where you realize that your kids are far removed from you than you are from your parents, right? No matter how close we are to our parents, we always have this gap in understanding of things, right? Pre-internet, post-internet, digital refugees, digital natives, digital immigrants, right? We're the digital immigrants. We really have to be considerate of the fact that these are the digital natives, and these digital natives have a different relationship with their devices than we do. Now, I know I'm going into a lengthy conversation, but this is the part that I really want to get to, because how dependent we are to the hardware that we hold in our hands and the data that these hardwares are processing, which is the artificial intelligence, the implication of that, the AI that is in our devices, that I, back in 2018, was using 4 different things, right? To copy and paste from here to here to here. Before ChatGPT, this was the way to do AI, right? Like, you want to write anything with AI, this is how you do it. It wasn't all, put into one single browser page. So what's happening today with the kids, the psychological impact of it, is that the new authority is growing, right? New authority is growing. So it's no longer just a device that you send the signal to and the device sends the signal back. It's authoritative now, because as an adult, we can see that there's an artificial intelligence. It doesn't have arms and legs and lips and nose and a mouth, right? But when we develop ourselves as a human, we are developing ourselves looking at objects as, does it have eyes? Does it have nose? Does it have mouth? And does it have legs and hands, right? Quote unquote toys, right? That's what toys do. Toys have big eyes on them. So that way kids look at them like, yep, make the connection there. And that's how the brain develops over time. So these days, when the system that performs like a human, right? It's a term called HITL, or Alan Turing's testing, which is that is artificial intelligence so intelligent that he cannot separate it from another human being? As in, a human cannot tell if that's an intelligent system that is humans or artificial one, right? So this is a almost 70, 80-year-old system, or 80-year test. It's called Turing test. This Turing test is is challenging to comprehend for adult like us. So this is the kind of gap that we're going to have with our kids, that kids are going to look at things that we're not seeing. They're going to take authoritative instruction from artificial intelligence systems. We wouldn't, but they will. They will, because we're seeing that already with kids that are dating artificial intelligence systems, committing suicide knowing that their girlfriend, which is the AI, which is a TV character that doesn't exist, and then also taking instruction from artificial intelligence, where artificial intelligence system really didn't have the best intention for the kids, right? So they're behaving accordingly. We have seen that with adults happening, right? I've talked about it in a few of my discussions online, is that the Google developer who developed the AI, he literally came out and went to the public media and told everybody that, hey, this system is alive and it cannot be considered as an intelligence because it is literally a living being at this point, right? This is the developers of artificial intelligence that's falling for this. Now our kids will have access to this ChatGPT or not ChatGPT. And this is where I kind of get scared a lot, because there are mini baby version of ChatGPTs that doesn't have all the restrictions that ChatGPT, as a $1 billion company, will put into it. Versus what about that $1,000 app developer from, I don't know, some foreign country who doesn't care about, our children's ability to understand what's good or what's bad, right? These systems, I mean, look, when I say billions and thousands, I literally mean billions and thousands, right? When ChatGPT first came out, the second version of ChatGPT that came out, somebody faked it for $600. Literally, it was working as good as ChatGPT, and it didn't have any boundaries to it. And it was developed inside of a university for $600 using just some cloud credits. You don't have to be a fancy master's degree, PhD holder to develop ChatGPT. As long as once developed, it can be replicated as a million times as needed. So when you talk about Masako, I know you mentioned DeepSeek, right? DeepSeek is literally a version of ChatGPT that costs $5 million instead of $100 million, right? So I say all that just to kind of get people to start turning their brain a little bit, say like, wow, okay, that didn't make sense, but what do I need to do in order to make it make sense, right? What do I need to do next? What do I need to understand, and what action do I need to take next? Because this artificial intelligence and the psychological impact of it is something that we really have to get started, not today, but yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you talk about just the various artificial entities that exist, I think at some point we'll find out what we did when we let the genie out of the bottle. I think we're not there yet, right? So the question I have, I went to my Apple device and turned off the Apple Intelligence. It wasn't that good, but I realized it's a bad deal for me. You get to know everything about what's going on in my life. I don't know crap about you. I don't even get a break on the phone. So as much as you found out about me, the phone should be free. That's what I think. But at any rate, right, it was just, when I really thought about it, it's like, it's not enhancing my life. It's a bad deal. I'm giving up my information. I'm giving up my data, what I'm looking at, because eyeball tracking and all that good stuff. So you don't even know just what websites I go to. You know where my eyeballs look on the screen. And I paid you for the privilege. I'll pass. So I turned it off. So I'm just saying, disconnected it from my ChatGPT as well. Yeah. So you just got to think of just because something is new and shiny, is it the right tool for you, right? And definitely, if you're not sure how it works, passing that on to the young people in your life just because it's the latest and greatest for bragging rights, et cetera, who's the parent, who's the child? Just saying.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Oftentimes when the parents are becoming parents at a young age, I think, I always say when we meet someone, we're meeting their first unhealed traumatic experience. I mean, true story. And so, to live in fear, right? To think all of those big thoughts with regard to Chat GPT or DeepSeek. It's like all relationships. What relationships are we sowing into? Are we training the model?
Right.
So if we're utilizing these large language models to benefit us, then we're training it to think like us. That's why we utilize it in our workspace or in our home space, with, as a helpmate, if you will. We're
Right.
utilizing it to help us. But there's a fine line between utilizing it to help us and then being overtaken with it, because it sounds to me like even when Asif was explaining how he could not do one thing without the other, that's essentially, that's an addiction, right? We can't do this without doing that. We're addicted to utilizing said services, and we feel incomplete when we don't have access to them.
Yes. This weekend, so glad you said that. So this weekend I did a Wounded Warrior thing where basically it's about, mind, body, meditation, whatever. You leave your cell phone in the car. And it was just so great to not have to worry. If you hear something ringing, it ain't me. If I hear something tingling, it ain't me. I get to focus and be where I am and do what I'm doing, right? The whole thing with quiet time for dinner and all the phones, I think that's an excellent idea. I think that our interactions with each other, not just in schools, but homes and different social events, really need to hit the fundamentals again. I know y'all have seen it because it's so common. I've gone out to dinner with a friend, and we look around, there will be other people on dates, and they don't say a word. They text back and forth the entire dinner. The food comes. This is good. How is yours? Like, what? They're right on you. So I make it a point when I go out in some situations, turn my phone off. I am not a person that's going to save the world. My sister always says, what if somebody died? And I'm like, that phone won't bring them back. They don't have Lazarus app, right? So,
oh Lord, it's so funny that you say that, Bobby. I had someone near and dear to me, and I could not think of the name. I was like, I'm calling the group that you normally get together with. I was like, what's that person's name? What's that person's name? What, the one that died and came back? What's his name?
No, wow.
Lazarus. I was like, I need you to pray that Lazarus prayer.
Right. Wow.
I need you to pray that Lazarus prayer. Oh my God. It's like we're so connected and so dependent upon these platforms, these machines, these applications. The power that we would truly have to be present with one another, to just turn it off, leave it in another space. Don't even bring it out on the table to turn it over.
Right.
I always say, if you want to buy back some time, spend some time in silence, in prayer and meditation. I was like, you will give the address to everything that belongs to you. Instead of sowing our time into these apparatuses, these devices, these networks. Sometimes we just need to shut it all down. And even as parents, when, if we can't do it as parents, how are we going to ask our children to do it? We're the leaders.
First teachers. So the thing is, as the first teachers, what are you teaching? What example? What things are you teaching passively and don't even recognize it? So,
right.
When your phone rings, do you run to go grab it? Just saying. Do you have quiet hours set on your phone? Can anybody call you? Because if you look at the phone calls you get on average, how often do you get a life or death call? If you're not a doctor, brain surgeon, heart surgeon, doing something like that, or emergency services worker?
I've been on the receiving end of those life or death calls. So when it comes to tell you the truth, late at night, I don't keep the phone near me. I'm very intentional, because as an empath, I feel everything anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm very intentional about unplugging and saying, you know what? It'll be there when I wake up in the morning, because oftentimes, if y'all are anything like me, oftentimes I don't sleep anyway, right? I'm up all night. So what do I look like being up all night and then being consumed and concerned about others? It's like, if I'm going to be up all night, I at least need to unplug and just sit in that quiet space.
Right. Well, just being plugged in all the time, has changed behavior. So your kids are sneaking, making late night phone calls just to talk, but still, you should be resting. And if you notice your social circles, if you don't block them, they'll call you at midnight to say, "Oh, I was just talking about," and you're like, "What the?" But every time you answer it, you're training them that that's the new standard, because since their life is always on, you're always on, right? And your kids are always on. When are you resting? When are you re-energizing? When are you doing these things? Yeah.
So I think I love this discussion, because one of the things that Bobby is a subject matter expert of is supply chain, right? And as parents, we know we do work in supply chains. Me and Bobby, we both work on logistics. It's hard to do some things in our personal life because our priorities are professional lives. Our priorities are societal life, right? So, I mean, Masako, what you just said is so powerful for everybody to adhere to, right? Is the fact that I leave my phone outside of my room as I'm, going to bed. But think about the supply chain behind it. Think about that. Let me call it what we call it in the logistics, BOM, bill of materials. I'm not saying that because I'm a supply chain guy. That's literally the terminology that we use when they say large language model. They will say, what's the bill of material behind this large language model, right? Because everything has a supply chain behind it. Like I said earlier, data has gravity, right? So when anything that has gravity, it's a supply chain. Anything that has a supply chain has a bill of material, right? And then what's being delivered has a list of bill of materials. So let's talk about the bill of materials of what happens with a device in the brain. Well, brain, like we talked about earlier, is pinging all parts of your endpoint in your body to say, are you still there, right? If you're there, that means the bloods are flowing. We're doing good. Everything is working just as normal. So when you have to scan for things and you're scanning for devices that are not there, your brain takes an actual break. Mm-hmm. If it's there and it can feel the presence, it does extra hard work. So if it's next to your bed and not in your hand, it's targeting where that phone is in relations to your body. So let me say that thing one more time. Your brain actually knows the distance between you and your fingertip. That's the way brain works. Because just because it can send a signal doesn't mean that signal is enough. It has to calculate the fact that if I have to reach for my left hand, I think the camera's not seeing it. If I have to reach for my left hand, my brain has to calculate the distance between me and my face, because my face and my brain is not the same thing, right? So it has to adjust all these instructions in order to say, if you lift these fingers up, you have to get this. So it's scanning all the time. And it's doing these calculations all the time. So if you have a phone right next to you, and this is what I mean by bill of materials, amount of energy you're exercising in your brain is that it's continuously looking for that phone and making sure you can grab that phone when you need it. That's what I mean by bill of material. That's what I mean by cost of having a phone next to your bed. If you leave it outside, your brain is going to just know, just like last 80 days, last 30 days, you did not have that phone next to you in the bed. You have to get up from the bed and go somewhere else to get it. Don't have to scan for it. But if it's in arm's reach, that means it's scanning for that phone's existence through your hand, because it's pinging your fingertips to say, where is the fingertip and how far is the phone in order to grab it? Because your brain is in always on mode because it's an emergency all the time. Somebody might be calling me, texting me, or sending me a Venmo for whatever reason.
Like, I have a question. Who's responsible, before the whole AI conversation came about, who's responsible for the things that we were thinking about and speaking out into our rooms when we go to our phone? Now we're receiving text messages and advertising on the websites when we get back on our phone. So who's responsible for that?
So let's talk about the bill of material behind that too, right?
Right.
It's a very sneaky tool, actually, but we allow it ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. We give permission to whoever's doing this. So one of the things that you have to do is turn off your Wi-Fi all the time, keep your Bluetooth off all the time, turn off access to these apps all the time, because some of the times you don't realize it. If you delete an app, that's not the end of the app. You have to reboot your phone in order to get rid of that app, actually. And if it's sitting on your cloud somewhere, you don't know what sort of access you gave when you deleted from your device, but not from your cloud.
Right.
So you don't have knowledge of how these informations are being taken, right? So for example, who's responsible for it? I am responsible for it because I literally said, yes, I accepted the 8,000 page letter you sent me as an agreement, right? Somewhere it probably says like that Family Guy joke, right? If I come and punch you in the face in the street, you cannot sue me for that, right? And somebody actually comes and punches you in the face and says, you said agreed, right? So yeah, I'm responsible for that. But as far as if you can go just minimal, that's still not enough, right? Because you're still connected to the internet. And remember, we talked about VPN earlier. We also talked about ISP, the internet service provider. It's like, yeah, it's the same river. What are you going to do about it, right? So these ISP services are massive. There isn't that many of them, and they make billions of dollars off of doing things that you didn't sign up for. Let's just say that, right? So who's responsible for this advertisement? I guess if you... I don't mean to take it to the psychological level, but this is how I explain marketing. If you don't want to be lied to, don't expect things.
Right.
Only reason people can lie and get away with it is because we have expectation from whatever is being said to us, right? But that's just not, like something that I want to go down the rabbit hole today. But if you don't want to be marketed to, just accept it. You don't want any of this stuff. Keep it as far away from you possible, right? You can use devices that only have Safari and text messages, phone calls, right? Calculators, if you don't have any social media, you don't have social media, you can use DuckDuckGo instead of Google browser on your Safari, right? So you have so many options, but you have to work towards that. You have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, and then that's it. With information, people really can't educate themselves, educate their families, as far as how to take back ownership of your life. We've given so much away, and in that space, we've gotten relatively little back, other than some kind of dopamine thing going on in our brain. Well, I'm a little bit more expensive than that, so nowadays I need cash. No, but what I do need is to understand what's going on and where's the revenue streams and what role am I and my family playing in that. We need to opt out of some things instead of opting into everything, fearing that we'll be left behind. Some things are best left behind. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, we talked about psychological impact in the last part of the discussion, and we talked a few things about cybersecurity in the early part. But we are covering a wide spectrum of topic here, and I think psychological impact of it is one of those last part of the spectrum because we really don't talk about it. And I'm so glad Mosako's in the mix of the conversation because she asked that flavor that otherwise this would be just a tech talk, right? Because if you look at the spectrum of data, psychological impact of an end user is the least of anybody's problem. Because end user doesn't pay for their psychological safety, does it? End user pays for whatever that usage is of data or whatever the usage of application is. If we were paying for our psychological safety, the conversation will be completely different. We will live in a different types of app store. I mean, we all live in app store, don't we? Somehow. So I guess if you have to look through all of the spectrum and understand it from one single foundation, it just comes down to data, right? One of the things that I will tell you was in a story kind of we talked about earlier, data has a gravity. One of the gentlemen looked up their washing machine, and the washing machine was sending about 30 gigabytes or 30, I think it was 30 gigabytes of data per week from their washing machine. Why would a washing machine need 30 gigabytes of data? It doesn't make any sense, right? But you have to have it make it sense because you have to care about it that much to say, my washer and dryer should not be sending 30 gigs of information using my internet to some places where I'm not even sure where it's going, right? A lot of the cases you can find is that some of your devices in your house is sending signals overseas, right? Like, why is it going over there for? I bought it in Best Buy in US, right? So you have to demand psychological safety. You have to demand those changes to the way things are for your best you, right? Because their best you is the best buyer, right? The person that spends the most is the best you for them, right? But if you don't have a best you for yourself, well, let's just say it won't be the same conversation. We got to change that conversation a little bit. So before we jump off, let's kind of gather some thoughts here. Like, what do you guys think? What would you like to see next? And maybe we have to have the continuity of this conversation. And what do we learn next time? Go with you, Bobby.
Well, first off, I would like people to please comment and drop us a like if you're really enjoying what you're hearing. We're trying to make it technical, but yet easy to understand, right? We take technology and bring it down to a level that really integrates into people's lives, because the human factors are really what matter. Families are really what matter. So whereas some, shows talk about the technology in and of itself and will geek out. Okay, we're like, yeah, we see it, we understand it, we work in it, but we're people oriented. So that being the case, when you talk about children, educators, and what the new face looks like, there's going to be a divide between what sells and what the science says is best. So I'm just really excited about the new opportunities, but a little cautious about will we do what is best for the learner. And if you look at our track record in this country, we do what's best for the dollar. So how do we find the spaces in between? And how do we advocate for technology companies to deliver things that are ethical in nature and and take responsibility for the things that they put out there, right? So part of it is them, part of it is us. And I think that we really need to close the gap between what is delivered and what is needed. So I'm excited about the future. And those are some of the new topics that we'll be talking about as we move forward. Masako?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on Bobby Ray. It's not a you or a them. It is an us. And we have to be the solutions that we seek. If we are in the space, if we are a parent, or if we're all someone's child, Mommy, to be able to stand in the space to see what solutions that we can bring to our communities and then create that change. And so I believe that we're doing that in the field of tech, in the tech space, in the space of parenthood, having younger ones where we can be in the community and show parents that, you know what, this is something that you could be a part of. It's not far removed from who you are.
Excuse me.
Well, with that note, I know it's royal time. It's our bedtime and our, shut the eye time. So I think this was a great conversation. Really want to thank a lot to our guest for coming in, Tristar, and sharing her educational background to the conversation. Like Bobby said, we're techies, but we are people focused. And there's nobody that's more focused on people than the educators. And our e-learners deserves more, and they need better than what we're giving them. Let's get more people involved, right? So with that, good night, and until next time, take care, and aye, we're out.
Aye. Tristar said thank you for having her. Thanked us for having her here.
Thank you. Good night.